good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking some time this morning to join the WebEx. We've got a full product overview ready to go this morning for every lineup in the Sunfire subwoofer line. So we're going to get started with the history, heritage, how Sunfire got started. Like many of our core brands, product lines has got a very unique startup and history that I like sharing with dealers or end users when we're talking about Sunfire. So everything started really 1971. Bob Carver was the brainchild behind it. It's one of the top industry icons when it comes to audio engineering and amp design. He developed something called the tracking Downconverter amplifiers and the technology high Back-EMF electromotive force woofers, and really has enabled Sunfire to lead the way in high-end audio, thanks to his constant drive and to change the status quo and come up with a better way to do things. So 1971, it all got started. Tracking Downconverter is a patented technology which enabled low heat, high efficiency, high output, superior reliability, and compact designs, high power and very small cabinet space. And then with subwoofer designs, the high Back-EMF was kind of twisted into a lot of his unconventional designs that did high output, small cabinets with incredible performance. So I like to tell people, it all started with a coffee can. 1971, Bob Carver was still in college when he developed his first amplifier. Basically, he was working on how to get a very compact, high-power amplifier unit together, and he's trying to get everything together for the Macintosh clinic where people could bring their amplifier designs and have them tested as far as their true power outputs. And he was up against the clock and ended up shoving everything into a Folgers coffee can. And so brought that coffee can to the Mac clinic, and it metered out at a true 350 watts, which back in the day, this is in the early 1970s, was insane. So that kind of went on with his launch of a company called Phase Linear, which was a big amplifier company back in the 70s and 80s. 1979, his first 400-watt amplifier, 7 inches by 7 inches, and he was challenged to design an amplifier that would sell for $1 a watt. So $400 MSRP, 7 by 7 cube amplifier. Then he went on in the late 80s, started doing loudspeakers. His first model was called the Amazing Loudspeaker. It's a ribbon-based model, 50 inches of ribbon coils, producing a soundstage. Went on 1994 when Sunfire was born. He developed the tracking Downconverter amplifier, which is still key in use today. We're going to go over that a little bit later. And in 1998, high Back-EMF subwoofer. It was the first of its kind. High bass, high power output, and a very small, compact design. 2000, he came up with the ultimate receiver. At the time, it was the world's most powerful receiver at 200 watts a channel, 7-channel, it was RMS. And then 2006 through 2010, came out with a bunch of different speaker designs, the Cinema Ribbon, which was a compact bookshelf design of the Amazing Loudspeaker from back in the late 80s. And then the Rosa came about in 2007. It was the world's first flat panel subwoofer, the technology that we call still bass, anti-shake technology, which we're going to go into details a little bit later. 2008, got into the in-wall market. In 2009, the HRS line was expanded to do bookshelf speakers, high resolution, so pretty much have a complete lineup for home theaters. Then 2010 came out with the DS series, which was a Sunfire Class D amp they used in their entry-level subwoofer line. 2011 came out with the Atmos, which we're going to talk about in detail again. 2 6.5-inch drivers, one active, one passive, and this is a little beast. If you guys have had a chance to hear it, we'll go into that. And then 2012 came up with the HRS IW8. So we took the HRS line and added an in-wall dual active 8 subwoofer with the still bass technology. And then here we are today. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk over the technology of Sunfire to start off with. There's three really key points that we use in designing our subs that enables us to the product we have today. And the first one we're going to talk about is high Back-EMF. EMF stands for electromotive force. So a lot of people ask, how do we do that with such big bass and such a small cabinet? Back in the day, this was thought not to be possible. Anthony Hoffman, he was a mathematician back in the 1960s, developed a formula which has been adapted to the field small parameters that we're using in speaker design industry today, so that you can only have two of the following when enclosing a subwoofer, or designing a subwoofer, efficiency, box size, and low frequency. So up until that date, it was really, you could only have two of the three, and it was not possible to have all three features in one single box design for a sub. So first we look at the big box solution. So big box solution, big airspace, a lot of area inside, so it doesn't take much power from the amplifier to compress the air. By doing that, the voice coil will remain cool, so you get efficiency. So a low back electromotive force, low current, and we're going to talk about low, the BL sign, basically that is mass over current, and it generally equates to the motor strength of the driver. And these are your typical subwoofers that have been around for years. So big airspace, not very much current, provides adequate bass. So if we take this on the Hoffman's law, it's efficient, it gets bass, but the box enclosure is huge. So if we take a look at a small box with big box fundamentals, because that's what Sunfire is all about, but you can't approach a small box with the same force and driver as in a big box design. So the voice coil will still remain cool because we're not overdriving it, but the air inside, the cabinet space is much smaller. It's harder to compress, so you're lacking as far as the bass output. So we call that the small sub paradox. So small woofer, big bass, hard to design. In this application, we've got efficiency because we're not throwing much power at it. Got adequate box size, smaller, compact, but we're lacking in the bass. So then we take it a small box done wrong, is what we call it. So we've got everything from the previous one where we were lacking in the bass. People would think, well, we'll just add more power to it, right? Wrong. So boosting the currents and nothing else is going to really compromise efficiency. It's going to send the driver to overheat. And that works great, but only for a few seconds. It's not very well designed. It's not efficient. It's not a suitable production theory. So what we've done is using the high Back-EMF woofers, we've completely changed the geometry of the woofer in our design. So we use custom long throw woofers, gives us increased stroke, custom designed voice coil, which allows more excursion, and custom magnets, very large magnets. So we've had high power, but not destructively high power. When we get into our tracking down converter and how that works, it will make more sense. So the result in this is low current, but high Back-EMF. So what we've achieved here with the Hoffman scorecard, is it efficient? Yes, it's efficient because of the tracking down converter technology in our amplifier. The box small? Yes, it's a small airspace cabinet, and it's providing adequate bass. So if we take this, and the result is little, low, and loud. So little cabinet, easily hidden. Everyone from the end user to the interior designers, everyone likes something that's smaller, can be hidden and out of plain view. So superior low frequency reproduction. So low frequencies excel in this design. And loud, we've got a huge dynamic range. So then looking at our three components that come into key here is the custom long excursion drivers, the high current that we throw at it, and the high back electromotive force. So we kind of look at our size slot of a custom woofer. So we've got the motor structure with an overly large magnet and a special extended voice coil, which enables us to do long excursion. which really excels in small airspace because it moves a lot of air. So high back-EMF, I like to think of it as it's directly proportional to efficiency. So essentially what it does is the pressure inside such a small enclosure, as the woofer pushes out every time the base hits, the back pressure pulls that woofer back to resting position as fast as it would go out. So it enables us to very tight base, it hits hard and fast, and it's immediately back into place and ready to go again. So that's the first technology term that really excels with Sunfire. The second one I want to talk about is the tracking down converter. So this has everything to do with the amplifier inside the subwoofer. So what is the tracking down converter and why does it matter? So essentially, a traditional amplifier, it's got a resting point or a reference point as a power supply that's usually parked up above and beyond where it needs to be. So the current required by the amp usually varies under the rail or the reference point, and more often than not, way below it. So what happens with all that energy? So the difference between the value of the current and the power resting point has to go somewhere, and it gets dissipated into heat. So then we get into efficiency issues. So the best thing to think about it with tracking down converter, I like to tell people it's like a cruise control for your car. So you've got the cruise control set at 65 miles per hour. You're driving along, everything's fine. You get into an incline or a steep hill. So your car is going to automatically throw on the gas, add more fuel to the engine to maintain your speed. Once you peak up and then start going back down the hill, cruise control lets up and you're pretty much coasting, maintaining the desired speed. So this tracking down converter is constantly tracking your output voltage that's being called for. And we're parking at 6 volts above the required voltage at all times. So what this does for us is it's extremely efficient and keeps the amp very cool. So what does TDC tracking down converter mean for our subs? So no internal, external fans. Cabinets do not heat up. Very efficient. We're enabled to get smaller airspace, smaller box sizes, and you're not getting any sacrifice in audio quality. So like we talked about how it's parked just 6 volts above the desired voltage call out, and we're constantly tracking the audio signal. So if we're at 0 volt output, our reference point for our power supply is at 6 volts. If we're at 30 volts, our reference point is 36 volts. Again, it's all about efficiency. So there are a lot of times people ask, so is the tracking down converter, that's what enables us to get it in a small cabinet. That's just a part of it. So the tracking down converter combined with the high back EMF that we talked about really is what makes Sunfire unique and way ahead of its class. But then there's one more feature that's really added into our design, and this has got a kind of a cool story behind it. So we call this the asymmetrical cardioid surround. That's hard to say. And the whole deal with that is Bob Carver was sitting in his doctor's office waiting for a checkup and was looking at a picture of the human heart that was on the wall. And he noticed that places where there were a lot of movement in the heart had thicker tissue walls. So he figured, well, hey, why can't we do that with our sub-surround? So if you look at the surround on the Sunfire subwoofers, you've got a thicker width for where the points that are stressed the most during excursion. It also helps for the high back EMF to bring that woofer back to resting in between space hits. So if we take all of these 3 things that we just talked about and combine it in, here's what we get with. We get little, small airspace, right? So it's easily hidden. Low frequencies, superior low frequency reproduction, loud, very loud, cool voice coil, high efficiency, woofer doesn't get hot, doesn't have a meltdown, and of course that's a good thing. So we look down at Hoffman's iron law, we've got 3 out of the 3 boxes. fulfilled there. So those are the three things as far as the technology behind the Sunfire subwoofers. Now we're going to take a look at the whole product overview. So currently we've got three lines in the makeup, and you know, good, better, best, but we like to think of it as really good, better, and best. So our really good Sunfire DS line gives you the brand. It's at a very aggressive price point, and it's great as far as performance at that price. Then we get into the HRS, which is a step up as far as performance, application branded with the inclusion of the in-wall sub. And then we get into the XT series, which is our top-of-the-line flagship line, high power, low airspace, extremely good performance. So the first lineup we're going to look at is the XT series. So we've got an 8, a 10, and a 12. The woofer makeup here is active side firing, high back-EMF woofer. And then on the opposite side, we've got a side firing passive radiator. So in the XT, both of your woofers that are visible are on the sides of the actual subwoofer cabinet. It does have the tracking downconverter amplification that we talked about, and the Asymmetrical Cardioid surround, ACS. Digital auto EQ, so it's got the calibration mic included. It's set and it'll EQ the room depending on placement. An anti-walking tread design feet. So on the bottom of the subwoofer, we've got the rubber feet, and traditionally you'd have issues as that sub's going to town. It might walk forward, backwards, right to left. So what they've done is they've cut grooves in the bottom of these feet to prevent walking as the vibration comes with the basics. And of course, you have your choice of color as long as it's high gloss black. So we're going to look at the XQ12 first. So MSRP is $2,000. Got the 12-inch high back EMF, the passive radiator, 3,000 watt amplifier in this guy. So extremely high power that enables us to get the improved frequency response as well as the very small cabinet. So if you notice in all of our subwoofers, the cabinet, the outside dimensions are really just slightly bigger than the diameter of the woofer. So it's a 194-ounce woofer magnet. It's a huge magnet in there. A 3-inch diameter voice coil, so it's an oversized coil to handle the excursion. If you look, we're at 13.5 by 14 by 13, so just slightly bigger than the diameter of the woofer itself, and it's weighing in about 60 pounds. This woofer is a beast. Then we get into the 10, so same stats, same woofer configuration. The 10, the difference here is we've got a 2,700 watt amplifier. Frequency response, a little bit higher on the low end because of the size of the woofer. Same size woofer magnet and voice coil. And your dimensions, again, just slightly bigger than the outside diameter of the woofer. And then we get into the 8. So 8-inch woofer configuration, 1,800 watt amplifier in here. Frequency response, again, a little bit higher than the bigger models. 22 hertz is where it starts out. It's a little bit smaller of a woofer magnet. We're going with a 2-inch diameter on the voice coil on this. 10.5 by 12 by 10.5. Weighs in at 42 pounds. So let's take a look at the back of the woofer. Some things to know. So your variable adjustments, not predefined switches, discrete for volume, phase from 0 to 180, your crossover settings. It's got a 12-volt trigger. We need to trigger it through 12 volts. Digital auto EQ. So we've got the mic input, the start auto EQ button. Position your subs in the room. You hit start. Goes through the calibration process. And then we get to the inputs. So we've got gold-plated RCAs, auto sensing is on, XLR balanced input as well. So we've got high-pass line level outputs for a pass-through. That is bypassable. And then input-output connections for linking multiple subs in the system. So now we look at the money differences here. So we start out small subwoofer, the EQ8, at $1,500 MSRP price point. For an additional $250, we can get into the XD-EQ10. So obviously, bigger woofer, bigger amplifier, a little bit better frequency response. And then from there, we step up another $250, we get into the XD-EQ12. So 12-inch woofer, 3,000-watt amplifier, and your frequency response put on to 16 hertz as its start point. So that's the XD-EQ subline. From here, we're going to go to the Sub-Rosa. Now, the Sub-Rosa was deemed as the world's first on-wall subwoofer. So we've got two 10-inch high Back-EMF woofers inside of there. Cabinet depth is only 3 3/4 inches. So it's basically as deep as a business card is wide. 2,700 watt external amplifier is what runs it. Rack mount, comes with the rack ears, of course, and calibration microphone. And it's got patented anti-shake still bass. So essentially what this is you're looking at the cabinet, the woofers are spaced to the far right and far left of that grill area. In the center, there's a counterweight. Essentially what it does is that counterweight moves out of phase of the woofers. So what that does is it cuts down on vibration. It's kind of like, I don't know if any of you guys came from the car audio world, when you've wired two speakers up out of phase, you know, there's a lot less vibration because you have counteracting forces. So we've got that counterweight in the center. When the woofers push out, that counterweight goes towards the back of the box. As that woofer comes back in, that weight goes toward the front of the box. Really cuts down on vibration. So there's the two model numbers that complete the system. SRS 210R, the cabinet and the woofers, and the SRA 2700 EQ is the amplifier itself. The calibration mic comes with the amplifier when you purchase it. And that package combines $3,450 MSRP. So then as far as, placing options, in-room, it's included, comes with the rubber feet for placement. So in-wall, we do have a in-wall back box available for this. Also got on-wall, there's a wall mount available. Against the wall, under couch, under bed, all those mounting options are included when you buy the cabinet. So the only mounting options a la carte are the on-wall and in-wall for this unit. So the next subwoofer that we're going to talk about is the Atmos. So the Atmos is very small subwoofer, extreme pressure inside. It's a sealed cabinet, the same architecture as far as passive on one side, radiator, or active on one side, passive on the other, left and right. So it's 1,400 watts, 24.4 PSI internally in the cabinet. And it only stands 8 inches tall. So we talked about 1,400 watts, and it does have the tracking down converter amplifier in it. It does have the room EQ. It's like the rest of the XT line. And these are dual 6.5 drivers. Active on one side, passive on the other. So if we take a peek at the cabinet itself, so it's extruded aluminum cabinet. The cabinet of the Atmos is a hell of a lot thicker than on our XT line, just because of the internal pressure that's inside of it. The cabinet itself, 8.5 inches. You can see that's kind of a side cut. It is packed to the gills from the inside. Every little inch of real estate is occupied, whether it be by the amp circuitry or the woofers itself. So inside that sealed chamber, it's 24.7 PSI, which equates to 2 atmospheres of pressure, hence the name. So we were at CEDIA one year, and we had a plexiglass model of this. So out of, I think it's 3/4 inch plexiglass, and it was a static model. The engineers said if we would actually have this play, the pressure inside would actually crack the placing. So extreme pressure on the inside, and that's really how we're enabled to get the big bass out of such a small cabinet and small woofer. So where the Atmos really shines is in dual sub configuration. So we've got a master slave connectivity on the back. And by doing that, we get flatter bass throughout the entire space. So it's more even keel as far as your sound staging for the lower frequencies. So running multiple subs reduces your resonance or reverb, hot spots, null spots, and really the room's impact on the sound as far as the architecture of the room size, ceiling height, and whatnot. Overall, extremely improved performance. And this guy has got $1,400 MSRP. I've had dealers put this Atmos up against, competitors 10 and 12-inch subs, and there's no comparison. If you guys haven't heard this sub, definitely do so. You've got to try it, to buy it, program and whatnot, bring it in, take a listen. It's definitely worth it. So that's really our XT line. We went through the 8, the 10, and the 12, the Sub Rosa, as well as the Atmos. And now we're going to move over to the HRS line. So the HRS line is our midline subwoofers. It replaced the highly sought-after D series. You guys have been selling Sunfire a while. We've added an in-wall model, which is the IW8. We're going to talk about a little bit later. So it does have the tracking down-converter power supply, variable controls. They're not presets. It comes in an 8, a 10, and a 12, as well as your in-wall. So HRS stands for High Resolution Series. So it's solid Sunfire performance, high value, not a lot of the bells and whistles. So we're really just concerned about bass, reproduction, small cabinet, and great frequency response. Again, you've got an 8, a 10, a 12, an IW8. Small footprint, like all of our Sunfire subs. Across the whole entire line of freestanding subs, the 8, 10, and 12, that all have 1,000-watt RMS tracking downconverter amplifier. Long throw, high back-EMF woofers, like you see in the XT line. Completely sealed cabinets. So there is no radiator on these. It's a sealed enclosure. HRS 12, of course, 12-inch driver. HRS 10, 10-inch driver. HRS 8 is our 8-inch driver. And then we've got the HRS in-wall 8 with the dual 8 drivers. So the still bass, the same technology that we saw in the Sub Rosa model, which was introduced in 2008, or in our 5th generation of it, we've brought over into the HRS in-wall model. We talked about how the magnet is out of phase, so it virtually eliminates mechanical vibrations. And that technology is found on our Sub Rosa XT and our HRS in-wall. So if we take a closer look at the HRS in-wall, it comes with the HRS IW8 amp, so it's 520-watt RMS digital amplifier. What's nice about this is one unit can drive 2 cabinets. It does have the tracking down-converter technology that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. XLR and RCA inputs. So let me get down to the cabinet. Got the still bass technology, mounts in a standard 2x4 depth with dual 8-inch active drivers. It can give you a good reference. In my house, I've got a setup with the Speakercraft LCR, and I've got 2 of the HRS IW8s mounted on the same wall as the TV, right and left. My son's room is directly above that, and it's amazing how if I can have a movie running, the vibration and the sound transfer up in his bedroom is almost non-existent. That's really where that still bass technology comes into play. So now we look at the specs on here. So the HRS-8 started at 22 hertz up to 100. The 10 goes down to 20 hertz, and the 12 to 16. Our in-wall, we're at 33 hertz to 150 hertz with our frequency, our dynamic range. Our RMS power across all three of the freestanding sets, 1,000 watts RMS. The HRS, 520 watt RMS external amplifier. So sealed forward firing woofer. And on the 8, we've got dual active sealed woofers. So MSRP on the 8, we're at 950. At the 10, we're at 1,100. At the 12, we're at 1,200. And the HRS IW8 with the matching amplifier, we're coming in at 1,750 MSRP. So that's our HRS line. And next we get down to the DS line. DS stands for Dynamic Series. So we look at this as our step-up line. It's included with our Sunfire Class D amplifier circuit. So we look at our 8-inch model, SDF8. So it's an 8-inch dual driver, active, front-facing, passive, downward firing. It's 200 watts RMS. We go up to our 10-inch driver, and we're at 250 watts RMS. Then we get into our 12, and we're at 300 watts RMS. Now the tracking down converter technology is not included in the DS line. So we're seeing the PDC amplifiers in the HRS and the XT line exclusively. So it's Class D digital amplifiers, uses a half watt in standby, uses frequency filtration design. And high quality doesn't always equal high dollars. So if you look at the back of the woofer, again, variable adjustments like you see on all of our lines. There's no preset dip switches for that. Auto sensing can be on for auto sensing, or the woofer can be always on. It's selectable. High pass line level outputs with the pass-through, just like you saw on the above lines. Gold-plated RCAs. And again, tracer color as long as it's in black ash. So we look at our frequency compared to SPL on the DS, which is really key as far as performance. So the point at which both lines intersect is about 60 hertz. And we're showing actual measurements which indicate that the DS line will play louder at lower frequencies, and yet the performance remains linear through the critical range of the subwoofer frequencies. So right about at that 60 hertz line is where we kind of flatten out. So as the frequencies increase, our volume doesn't increase. It stays very linear. It's an important combination considering the wide variety of sources that are available to today's consumer. The last piece we're going to look at is our wireless solution. So we've got wireless transceivers and receivers for our subwoofers. Works out at 2.4 gigs. The model number for the transmitter is the TX. The model number for the receiver is RX. So we're at $85 for the transmitter, $85 for the receiver, which basically gives you a little bit more options. Places where you wouldn't be able to get a wire to, you can use the wireless transmitter receiver. Gives you additional placement options for your subwoofer. One transmitter can go out to 2 receivers. So if you're doing a dual subwoofer setup, you'll be good with one transmitter and then a receiver at each sub. So now we look at the spec sheet here on the DS line. It's got a frequency response of the 8 starting at 32 hertz, capping off at 150 hertz. The 10 go down to 30 hertz, and the 12 we're down at 28 hertz. Our RMS power, 200 watts on the 8, 250 on the 10, 300 on the 12. And again, the design's front firing active and down firing passive. MSRP on the 3 models, $450 for the 8-inch, $575 for the 10-inch, and $675 for the 12-inch. And that's really it in a nutshell. I went over the technology behind it. XT series, our flagship series, the HRS series, our midline series, and then our DS entry-level series. If there are any additional questions after this, feel free to reach out via email, anything with system design or whatnot. I'd be happy to help. And at this point, if there are any questions, we'll open up the floor.
Thanks, Jeff. If anybody has any questions, if you want to type them into the chat window here, we'll get those answered for you. While we're waiting, I just want to remind everybody that the session was recorded, so it'll be posted up to the YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. So if you have any additional people on staff that would benefit from sitting through this, please feel free to pass the information along. I'll be sending out a link as well. We also have a upcoming webinar 2 weeks from today. Will be on the complete overview of the Panamax line. So I believe Jeff is also going to be hosting that event, and we look forward to seeing you if you can join us for that. It doesn't look like we have any questions here. If any of the dealers on here that happen to be direct, we have some fantastic demo programs, showroom price programs going on right now on Sunfire as well as Panamax and a few other of the core brands. So reach out to your sales representative. If you're currently working through AllNet to purchase your Sunfire equipment or would like to get some demo equipment, please let us know, and we'll be happy to work out a special price for you on something for yourself or your home or your showroom. So with that, if there's no other questions, I just want to say thanks again, Jeff, for hosting this event for us, and we really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing everybody in a few weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.